Good morning/afternoon/evening, everyone. Let's talk about something that no one really likes to admit: loneliness. We live in a world where friendships are celebrated as badges of honor. The brunch selfies, the group chats, the squad goals moments. It's everywhere. But what about the woman who has no friends? What about the woman who walks alone, not because she wants to, but because life has made her that way? Maybe she has outgrown the people she once trusted. Maybe life has tested her in ways no one else understands. Maybe she's been betrayed, abandoned, or simply forgotten, and so she learns to be her own best friend. She becomes the woman who dines alone, who takes herself to the movies, who celebrates her wins in silence. And you know what? That woman is powerful. She has mastered the art of solitude. She has discovered that she does not need an audience to validate her worth. She has realized that being alone does not mean being lonely. In fact, it means she has the freedom to choose, to evolve, to rise without permission. A woman with no friends is not a woman to pity. She is a woman to watch. Because when she stands on her own, she is unstoppable, she is fierce, and she is rewriting the rules on her terms. So to every woman who has ever felt alone, misunderstood, or out of place, own it. Walk boldly in your solitude, and when the world finally sees your strength, they won't ask who your friends are, they'll ask how you did it all on your own. Thank you. Here's an expanded version of the reality of loneliness in 600 words. Loneliness is a strange and silent companion. It does not announce its arrival, nor does it seek permission to stay. It simply settles in, wrapping itself around a person like an invisible cloak. For many women, loneliness is not just a passing feeling, but a way of life. One that society rarely acknowledges, let alone understands. A woman without friends exists in a world that constantly tells her she should be surrounded by them. Every movie, every advertisement, and every social media post glorifies friendships as if they are the ultimate measure of happiness. A group of women laughing over brunch, holding hands in sisterhood, celebrating birthdays in extravagant ways. These images create an unspoken pressure. They whisper to her that she is missing something vital, something that supposedly defines her worth. And yet, life does not always offer the luxury of deep, lasting friendships. There are many reasons why a woman may find herself without friends. It may not be because she lacks kindness, humor, or the ability to connect. Sometimes it is simply the circumstances of life. People move away, priorities shift, and once strong bonds weaken under the weight of time and distance. The woman who once had a tight-knit circle in school or college may find herself alone in adulthood, struggling to form new connections in a world where friendships become increasingly difficult to nurture. For some women, friendships are lost not to time, but to betrayal. A once trusted confidant turns into a stranger, and wounds form that do not easily heal. The pain of being let down by those who were once pillars of support makes trust a difficult thing to rebuild. After a few betrayals, a woman learns to be cautious, to guard herself, to choose solitude over another heartbreak. She tells herself that loneliness is better than disillusionment. Then there are women who walk alone because they simply do not fit into the mold that society has created for them. They think differently, dream bigger, and refuse to conform to expectations. These women are often misunderstood, labeled as intimidating, distant, or even unapproachable. The world prefers women who are agreeable, who blend into groups seamlessly, who follow the unspoken rules of social engagement. But the woman who refuses to shrink herself, who prioritizes growth over belonging, often finds herself standing apart. Work, responsibilities, and personal struggles also play a role. As women grow older, life becomes a balancing act between career, family, and self-care. There is little time left for maintaining friendships, and over time, even the most cherished connections begin to fade. Invitations dwindle, messages go unanswered, and before she knows it, she is standing alone in a crowded world. The reality of loneliness is that it is not always a choice, but rather a result of life's shifting tides. It is not always the consequence of a woman being difficult, unkind, or unwilling to connect. Sometimes it is simply the byproduct of evolving, of outgrowing, of experiencing life in ways that others do not understand. Society may romanticize friendships, but it does not prepare women for the reality that sometimes they will walk their path alone. And yet, despite the weight of solitude, there is a quiet strength in it. A woman without friends learns to listen to herself, to rely on her own company, to build an unshakable foundation within. She navigates a world that constantly tells her she is missing something, all while discovering that what she truly needs has been within her all along. There are many reasons why a woman might find herself isolated, some of which are beyond her control, while others are choices she makes for her own well-being. Isolation does not always happen suddenly. Often it creeps in slowly over the years as relationships fade, priorities shift, and life takes unexpected turns. A woman who once had a circle of friends may wake up one day and realize she is alone, not because she wanted to be, but because the connections she once held close have unraveled. One of the most common reasons behind isolation is personal growth. As a woman evolves, she may find that the friendships that once felt natural no longer align with who she is becoming. The conversations that once sparked excitement now feel forced. The activities that used to bring joy now seem empty. When a woman grows, she often finds that not everyone grows with her. Some friends remain stuck in old patterns, unwilling or unable to move forward. Over time, she begins to distance herself, not because she does not care, but because she realizes that staying in relationships that no longer serve her can be more draining than being alone. Another cause of isolation is betrayal. Trust is the foundation of any meaningful relationship, and when it is broken, it leaves behind scars that do not heal easily. A woman who has been let down by those she once relied on learns to build walls around her heart. She becomes cautious about letting people in, afraid that history will repeat itself. The pain of losing a friend to dishonesty, gossip, or disloyalty can be just as devastating as the end of a romantic relationship. And so, instead of risking another heartbreak, she chooses solitude. She convinces herself that it is better to be alone than to invest in friendships that may ultimately bring disappointment. Life circumstances also play a major role in isolation. Responsibilities increase with age, and time becomes a luxury. A woman balancing a demanding career, family obligations, or personal struggles often has little energy left for maintaining friendships. The people she once saw every weekend become distant, not because she no longer values them, but because life has pulled them in different directions. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and before she knows it, the friendships that once seemed unbreakable have faded into the background. Some women find themselves isolated because they do not conform to societal expectations. They think differently, dream bigger, and refuse to fit into the molds created for them. This kind of isolation is not always chosen, but is instead a consequence of standing out. When a woman refuses to settle for small talk, when she questions norms, when she challenges the status quo, she often finds herself on the outside. People may see her as too intense, too ambitious, too different. Instead of being embraced, she is left out, not because she lacks value, but because she refuses to blend in. Mental and emotional struggles can also lead to isolation. Anxiety, depression, or past traumas make it difficult to connect with others. A woman dealing with her own internal battles may withdraw from social interactions, not because she does not want friends, but because she does not have the energy to engage. She worries about being a burden, about not being understood, and so she retreats further into herself. The longer she stays away, the harder it becomes to return, and soon isolation becomes her new reality. The reasons behind isolation are complex, deeply personal, and often layered. No woman wakes up one day and decides to be alone. Rather, life shapes her experiences, forcing her to navigate relationships in ways she never anticipated. Whether by choice or by circumstance, isolation is a journey, one that carries both pain and unexpected strength. Solitude is often misunderstood. People associate being alone with sadness, with emptiness, with something that needs to be fixed. But for a woman who has walked the path of loneliness, solitude is not a weakness, it is a source of power. It is in those quiet moments, in the absence of distractions, that she learns who she truly is. She discovers that she is not defined by the number of people around her, but by the depth of her own thoughts, her resilience, and her ability to stand strong in a world that constantly tries to tell her she needs others to be complete. When a woman embraces solitude, she begins to see it not as something forced upon her, but as something that can be cultivated. She stops waiting for invitations, stops checking her phone for messages that never come, and stops longing for validation from people who may never truly understand her. Instead, she turns inward, building a life that does not rely on external approval. She learns to enjoy her own company, finding comfort in the stillness, in the quiet moments where she is left alone with her thoughts. She realizes that solitude is not empty, it is full of possibilities, full of clarity, full of growth. One of the greatest strengths found in solitude is self-reliance. A woman who does not depend on others for her happiness becomes unstoppable. She does not need a friend to encourage her to chase her dreams. She fuels her own ambition. She does not need constant reassurance. She builds her own confidence. She does not need to explain herself. She knows her worth without external validation. She becomes a woman who moves through life on her own terms, unshaken by the absence of others. This kind of strength is rare, but once developed, it cannot be taken away. In solitude, she also finds freedom. She is not bound by the expectations of friends or the pressure to fit into social circles. She does not have to pretend to be someone she is not, does not have to dim her light to make others comfortable. She makes choices based on what she truly wants, not on what others expect of her. She travels alone if she wishes, pursues her passions without hesitation, and creates a life that is uniquely her own. The absence of constant social obligations gives her space to explore, to dream, to become. Solitude also brings a deeper understanding of the world. Without the noise of constant conversations and the influence of other people's opinions, she sees things with a sharper clarity. She observes more, listens more, feels more. She learns to trust her instincts, to make decisions with confidence, and to embrace the unknown without fear. The silence teaches her patience, the stillness teaches her resilience, and the loneliness, when embraced, teaches her how to love herself in ways that no one else ever could. Over time, she realizes that solitude is not loneliness at all. It is a gift, a rare opportunity to grow in ways that those constantly surrounded by others may never experience. While others may fear being alone, she thrives in it. She finds beauty in the quiet, strength in her independence, and peace in knowing that she is enough. She does not need a crowd to make her feel worthy, nor does she need approval to know she is on the right path. She stands tall, unwavering, a force to be reckoned with, not because she has many people around her, but because she has learned to stand on her own. Loneliness is often seen as something to be avoided, something that signals failure or a lack of connection. Society conditions women to believe that being surrounded by friends, constantly engaged in social interactions, and always having someone to turn to is the only path to fulfillment. But what if loneliness was not something to fear? What if it could be transformed into something powerful? A woman who learns to reframe loneliness as a source of strength rather than weakness discovers a version of herself that many never get to meet. She realizes that solitude does not diminish her worth, it amplifies it. The first shift happens when she stops seeing loneliness as a void and starts viewing it as an opportunity. When the distractions of social obligations disappear, she finally has time to focus on herself. She is no longer spending her energy trying to fit into spaces that may not have been meant for her in the first place. She is not constantly managing relationships that drain her or molding herself into a version that pleases others. Instead, she redirects all that energy inward. In this space, she can ask herself the questions that truly matter. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I want for myself outside of expectation? What dreams have I set aside for the sake of fitting in? These are the questions that define her, the questions that help her carve a life of authenticity and purpose. Loneliness also forces a woman to become her own source of validation. When there is no one to constantly reassure her, when there is no external noise drowning out her inner voice, she learns to trust herself. She does not need a friend to tell her she is worthy, does not need a group to affirm that she belongs. She begins to cultivate a sense of self so strong that no amount of isolation can shake it. She stops seeking approval and instead starts giving it to herself. She looks in the mirror and sees someone whole, someone enough, even when the world tells her she should feel otherwise. This transformation is subtle at first, but over time it becomes unshakable. When a woman reframes loneliness as power, she also gains the ability to move through life without fear of being alone. She no longer clings to relationships out of desperation or tolerates mistreatment just to avoid solitude. She does not stay in friendships that feel one-sided or force herself to be part of groups where she does not feel seen. She understands that being alone is not the worst thing that can happen to her. Losing herself in the pursuit of others is. With this mindset, she begins to make choices that honor her worth rather than compromise it. This shift in perspective also allows her to see the world differently. Instead of looking at solitude as a punishment, she embraces it as a path to personal freedom. She realizes that she can do things on her own terms without waiting for company. She can travel alone, dine alone, celebrate alone, and still feel whole. She starts to recognize the beauty in her own presence, the peace in not constantly having to navigate the needs and expectations of others. In this space, she flourishes. Through this reframing, she transforms loneliness into something powerful, an asset rather than a burden. She no longer measures her life by the number of people in it, but by the depth of her connection with herself. She is no longer afraid of silence, no longer afraid of walking alone. Instead, she embraces it, knowing that in her solitude, she has found the one person who will never leave her, herself. A woman who walks alone is often seen as someone to be pitied. Society tells her that she needs a strong support system, a group of friends to validate her, and constant social interactions to feel fulfilled. But what if the very thing that people assume is her weakness is actually her greatest strength? A woman alone is not broken. She is not lost. She is not someone who failed at maintaining relationships or someone who couldn't fit in. She is simply someone who has learned to rely on herself, and that kind of self-reliance makes her unstoppable. When a woman stands alone, she becomes her own source of motivation. She does not wait for others to push her forward. She moves on her own. She does not depend on the encouragement of friends to chase her dreams or the approval of others to believe in herself. She has learned that her biggest supporter, her greatest cheerleader, and her most reliable companion is herself. There is a kind of fearlessness that comes with that realization. She is not waiting for someone to rescue her, not depending on external validation to tell her she is enough. She has already done that for herself. A woman alone is dangerous to a world that thrives on making her feel small. She does not seek permission to take up space. She does not shrink herself to fit into groups that do not appreciate her. She has walked through fire, faced rejection, endured loneliness, and still she stands. The things that were meant to break her have only built her resilience. She has learned that solitude is not emptiness, it is power. She understands that the fewer people influencing her decisions, the clearer her path becomes. Without distractions, without unnecessary drama, she is able to focus fully on her own growth. She is also unpredictable. She does not move according to others' expectations. She does not seek approval before making choices. She has built a life that is entirely her own, free from the constraints that come with needing constant companionship. This makes her bold, fearless, willing to take risks without hesitation. While others may hesitate, afraid of what people will say, she moves forward, knowing that she does not owe anyone an explanation. Independence also makes her adaptable. When a woman is used to being on her own, she learns how to survive in any situation. She does not crumble when life throws challenges at her. She does not panic when she has to navigate things alone. She has already learned how to handle difficulties without relying on others to fix them for her. She knows how to make decisions with clarity, how to trust her instincts, how to move forward without second-guessing herself. This ability to adapt, to keep going despite setbacks, makes her unstoppable. A woman who has learned to be alone is also immune to manipulation. She is not afraid to walk away from people who do not treat her well. She does not tolerate disrespect, does not cling to toxic relationships out of fear of loneliness. She understands that solitude is far better than being surrounded by the wrong people. This kind of self-respect makes her powerful. Others may try to control her, guilt her, or pressure her into conforming, but she does not bend easily. She knows her worth and she refuses to settle. People often mistake her independence for coldness, but in reality, she is simply selective about where she invests her energy. She is not unfriendly, she just values her time. She is not distant, she just refuses to entertain shallow connections. She is not lost, she is exactly where she needs to be. A woman alone is not someone to feel sorry for. She is someone to admire because she has unlocked a level of freedom that many will never experience. She is unshaken, unafraid, and completely unstoppable. A woman who owns her story is a woman who refuses to let others define her. She does not allow society to dictate who she should be, what she should want, or how she should live. She understands that her journey, with all its highs and lows, belongs to her alone. She does not apologize for the struggles she has faced, the mistakes she has made, or the choices that have shaped her. Instead, she embraces them, knowing that every chapter of her life has contributed to the strength she carries today. Owning her story means refusing to be ashamed of her past. The world often tells women to hide their pain, to present only the polished version of themselves, to erase the parts of their history that do not fit into a neat, acceptable narrative. But a woman who truly owns her story knows that every scar, every heartbreak, every failure has played a role in making her who she is. She does not seek to rewrite the past. She acknowledges it, learns from it, and carries it forward as proof of her resilience. She also understands that her story is constantly evolving. She does not allow herself to be trapped by outdated versions of who she used to be. People may try to remind her of her past mistakes, to hold her to an identity she has long outgrown, but she does not stay confined to the person she was yesterday. She grants herself the freedom to grow, to change, to reinvent herself as many times as necessary. She is not bound by old labels or the limited perceptions others may have of her. Instead, she takes control of her own narrative, shaping it in a way that aligns with who she is becoming. Owning her story also means embracing the power of her voice. Too often, women are taught to stay silent, to downplay their struggles, to avoid making others uncomfortable with their truth. But a woman who has claimed ownership of her journey does not hesitate to speak up. She does not shy away from sharing her experiences, her perspectives, or her dreams. She refuses to let anyone else tell her story for her. She understands that her voice has value and that her truth, no matter how difficult or unconventional, deserves to be heard. She also lets go of the need for validation. When a woman owns her story, she no longer seeks approval from the world. She does not wait for permission to live the life she desires. She does not measure her worth based on whether others accept her choices. She knows that her path is hers alone to walk, and she trusts herself to navigate it, even if others do not understand. This kind of self-acceptance frees her from the pressures that hold so many people back. She no longer needs to explain herself or prove herself to anyone. She is enough, just as she is. Owning her story is also about reclaiming power from those who may have tried to take it from her. Every woman has faced moments where she was underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel small. But a woman who fully embraces her journey does not allow those moments to define her. She rises above them, refusing to let the opinions or actions of others determine her worth. She rewrites the narrative in her own terms, ensuring that her story is one of strength, not defeat. Most importantly, she understands that her story is not just for her, it is a beacon for others. When a woman stands in her truth, unapologetically and without shame, she gives others permission to do the same. She inspires those who are still afraid to claim their own stories, showing them that there is power in embracing every part of themselves. She becomes living proof that no matter where a woman has been, no matter what she has endured, she has the right to stand tall, to be seen, to be heard, and to own every piece of her journey.